A man steps out of Vienna's Hotel Imperial into the December cold. Snowflakes settle on his shoulders as he lights a cigarette, unaware that 17 operatives are watching him from cars, cafes, and apartment windows. In exactly 43 minutes, he will be dead. His body will show no wounds. His hotel room will reveal no struggle. Austrian police will call it cardiac arrest. But the man drawing smoke into his lungs right now holds the blueprints to Iran's secret nuclear weapons program inside his head. And somewhere in Tel Aviv, a signature on a red-bordered file has already sealed his fate. This is Operation Winter Glass, the assassination that almost started a war, executed in the shadow of the United Nations itself. Dr. Farhad Nazari checked his watch. 7:47 p.m. The International Atomic Energy Agency reception would begin in 13 minutes, and he despised being late. Punctuality was a virtue his father had beaten into him during childhood in Isfahan, and decades later, the lesson remained etched in his behavior like scars that never fully healed. He took one final drag from his cigarette, crushed it beneath his heel, and began walking toward the Hofburg Palace where diplomats and scientists would spend the evening pretending that nuclear proliferation was a problem with solutions. What Nazari could not see was the woman in the silver Audi parked 30 meters behind him, speaking quietly into an encrypted phone. Architect is moving. Northbound on Kerntner Ring. Pace is normal. No security visible. The voice that responded came from a basement in Tel Aviv, routed through servers in Cyprus and Slovakia. Confirmed. All units maintain distance. We have time. Dr. Farhad Nazari was not his real name, though he had used it for 7 years across 3 continents. Born in 1961 in Tehran, he had shown exceptional aptitude for physics from childhood. By 16, he was solving differential equations that university students struggled with. By 22, he held a doctorate from the University of Manchester, having written a thesis on gas centrifuge dynamics that his British supervisors found brilliant but politically uncomfortable. They suspected correctly that the quiet Iranian student intended to apply his knowledge in ways that would not serve Western interests. He returned to Iran in 1985, just as the war with Iraq was consuming a generation of young men. While others died in trenches along the Shat al-Arab, Nazari worked in underground laboratories, refining techniques for uranium enrichment that Western sanctions had made impossible to purchase abroad. His genius lay not in theoretical innovation, but practical engineering. He could build centrifuge cascades from salvaged parts, improvise solutions when precision equipment was unavailable, and train technicians who had never seen the inside of a proper laboratory. By the late 1990s, Nazari had become indispensable to Iran's nuclear program. He oversaw the construction of the Natanz enrichment facility, designed the cascade configurations that would eventually produce weapons-grade material, and maintained relationships with suppliers in Pakistan, North Korea, and the black markets of Eastern Europe. Israeli intelligence first flagged him in 2002 when satellite imagery revealed construction at Natanz that matched theoretical models for a large-scale enrichment operation. A year later, Mossad obtained photographs of Nazari at a conference in Kuala Lumpur, meeting with AQ Khan's network representatives. The file grew thicker. Intercepted communications. Financial transactions traced through Dubai banks. A defector's testimony identifying the professor as the man who solved the metallurgical problems that had delayed Iran's centrifuge program for years. By 2008, Nazari carried what Mossad designated a red page, an open authorization for elimination that would remain active until revoked or executed. But Nazari was careful. He rarely traveled outside Iran, and when he did, Revolutionary Guard protection surrounded him constantly. He varied his routes, changed residences frequently, and communicated through couriers rather than electronic means. For years, he remained untouchable, a ghost who appeared in intelligence reports but never in crosshairs. Then Vienna happened. But here's what Israeli intelligence didn't anticipate. The opportunity they had waited years for would come wrapped in complications that threatened to unravel everything. The IAEA's December 2019 technical conference was routine. 3 days of presentations on safeguards implementation and verification protocols. Iran sent a delegation of 12 officials, mostly bureaucrats skilled at diplomatic obstruction. Nazari was not supposed to be among them. His name appeared on no official roster. His passport, issued under a false identity with cooperation from Iranian intelligence, listed his profession as agricultural consultant. Mossad learned of his travel plans 72 hours before departure through a source embedded in Tehran's airport security apparatus. The information was fragmentary, a name on a manifest, a destination code, nothing more. But cross-referencing with other intelligence streams confirmed the impossible. The professor was leaving Iran. He would be in Vienna for 3 days, and for reasons that remained unclear, he would be traveling without his usual Revolutionary Guard escort. The decision to proceed reached the highest levels of Israeli government within hours. Prime Minister's office, Defense Minister, Mossad Director. The risks were extraordinary. An assassination in Vienna, headquarters of multiple international organizations, would trigger diplomatic catastrophe. Austria's neutrality was sacred. The city crawled with intelligence services from dozens of nations. Any operation would unfold under surveillance from allies and enemies alike. But the opportunity was unprecedented. Nazari's knowledge represented an existential threat. Every day he remained alive, Iran moved closer to nuclear weapons capability. The calculation was cold but simple. Diplomatic damage could be managed. A nuclear-armed Iran could not. Authorization was granted at 3:47 a.m. Tel Aviv time, 41 hours before Nazari's flight was scheduled to land. Now pause here, because what happened next reveals how modern assassination actually works. It's not about lone gunmen or dramatic confrontations. It's about logistics, timing, and the bureaucratic machinery that transforms political decisions into operational reality. Operation Winter Glass activated 17 operatives across 4 countries within 6 hours of authorization. The core team, 8 agents from Mossad's Kidon unit, departed Tel Aviv on separate flights to European destinations. None flew directly to Vienna. They arrived through Munich, Zurich, Prague, and Budapest, carrying passports from countries whose citizens attracted minimal scrutiny: British, Canadian, German, Australian. Each identity had been constructed over years, complete with digital footprints, employment histories, and credit records that would survive all but the most intensive investigation. The support team was already in position. 2 logistics specialists had been stationed in Vienna for months, maintaining safe houses, vehicles, and equipment caches for operations that might never occur. A communications expert operated from a rented apartment overlooking the Danube, managing encrypted channels that connected the field team to Tel Aviv. A medical specialist, necessary for operations involving pharmacological methods, waited in a clinic 30 kilometers outside the city. The surveillance team arrived first, 12 hours before Nazari's flight. Their task was mapping, identifying his hotel, his schedule, his patterns of movement. They worked in rotating pairs, never approaching closer than 50 meters, communicating through encrypted text messages that self-deleted after reading. By the time Nazari checked into the Hotel Imperial, they knew which room he occupied, which elevator he preferred, and that he took his coffee black with 2 sugars. But the operation almost collapsed before it began. Nazari was not alone. Despite intelligence suggesting he traveled without protection, a man accompanied him, young, fit, with the watchful eyes of someone trained to identify threats. He carried no visible weapon, but his positioning during movement, always slightly behind and to the left of Nazari, betrayed professional training. Revolutionary Guard, Vajia officer. The surveillance team could not determine his identity or capabilities. The complication forced immediate reassessment. A protected target required different approaches. More operatives, more risk, more chance of exposure. Tel Aviv demanded confirmation before proceeding. Was the bodyguard armed? How skilled? Would he die protecting his principal? Or could he be neutralized without gunfire that would bring Austrian police within minutes? The answers came through patience and observation. Over 36 hours, the team catalogued every interaction between Nazari and his companion. The bodyguard was good, but not exceptional. He maintained awareness but made predictable mistakes, checking his phone too frequently, allowing gaps in coverage during transitions between locations. Most importantly, he accompanied Nazari everywhere except one place: the IAEA reception. Nazari would attend alone, diplomatic credentials barring unauthorized companions. For approximately 3 hours on the second evening, the professor would be vulnerable. What you're about to hear is reconstructed from intelligence assessments, leaked documents, and sources who spoke only on condition of anonymity. Some details remain classified. Others may never be confirmed. But the operational sequence represents the best available understanding of how Winter Glass unfolded. December 12, 2019. Vienna, 6:30 p.m. Nazari returns to the Hotel Imperial after a day of meetings. He showers, changes into formal attire, and reviews documents on his laptop. The surveillance team confirms his preparations through a compromised hotel employee who serviced his room earlier that day, noting the evening clothes laid across the bed. 7:34 p.m. Nazari exits the hotel. The bodyguard accompanies him to the lobby but stops at the entrance. A brief exchange. The bodyguard appears unhappy but accepts instructions. Nazari walks alone into the December evening. 7:47 p.m. Nazari lights a cigarette on Kartner ring. The silver Audi begins following at distance. 7:52 p.m. Two operatives on foot pick up the tail as Nazari enters pedestrian zones inaccessible to vehicles. They maintain visual contact through the Christmas market crowds. 8:04 p.m. Nazari arrives at the Hofburg Palace and presents credentials at the security checkpoint. He disappears inside. For the next 3 hours, he is beyond reach, surrounded by diplomats, security personnel, and surveillance systems that even Mossad cannot penetrate. The team uses this window to finalize preparations. A vehicle is positioned near the Hotel Imperial's service entrance. Equipment is checked. Contingencies are reviewed. Everyone understands that the next phase allows no margin for error, and this is where the story takes its darkest turn. 11:17 p.m. Nazari exits the Hofburg. He has consumed 4 glasses of champagne, enough to relax but not impair. He declines offers of transportation, preferring to walk. The December air is cold but not unpleasant. Snow falls gently. The streets gleam with Christmas lights. 11:24 p.m. A woman approaches Nazari near the Staatsoper. She appears distressed, searching for something in her purse, dropping papers. Nazari stops. Chivalry, perhaps, or simply the instinct of a man who has enjoyed an evening and feels generous. He bends to help gather the scattered documents. The contact lasts 11 seconds. During those 11 seconds, a man passes behind Nazari close enough to brush his coat. The touch is so slight that Nazari does not consciously register it. He thanks the woman, who apologizes profusely and hurries away. Nazari continues walking. What he does not feel is the microneedle that penetrated his coat and delivered 0.3 milliliters of a compound that Israeli chemical weapons specialists had developed specifically for assassination operations. The substance mimics natural cardiac arrest with near-perfect accuracy. Onset occurs between 45 and 70 minutes after exposure. No antidote exists. Death appears entirely natural to standard autopsy procedures. 11:31 p.m. Nazari returns to the Hotel Imperial. The bodyguard meets him in the lobby, relieved to see his principal safe. They exchange brief words. Nazari appears tired but content. He takes the elevator to the 4th floor alone. 11:38 p.m. Nazari enters his room. He removes his coat, loosens his tie, and pours a glass of water from the bottle on the nightstand. He does not notice that the seal was broken hours earlier. The contents supplemented with a sedative that will ensure he does not call for help when symptoms begin. 11:52 p.m. Nazari sits on the bed, suddenly dizzy. The champagne, he thinks. Too much champagne. He lies down, intending to rest briefly before undressing. 12:07 a.m. Nazari's heart rate becomes irregular. He is unconscious, breathing shallow. 12:23 a.m. December 13th. Dr. Farhad Nazari dies alone in room 408 of the Hotel Imperial. The cause? A massive myocardial infarction that would puzzle cardiologists who reviewed his medical records, showing no previous heart problems. Outside, the silver Audi drives slowly past the hotel entrance. A brief transmission reaches Tel Aviv. Winter glass complete. Architect is down. But here's what nobody anticipated. The operation's success would trigger consequences that nearly exposed the entire network. The bodyguard discovered the body at 8:15 a.m. when Nazari failed to respond to knocks or phone calls. Hotel security opened the door to find him lying peacefully on the bed, fully clothed except for shoes. No signs of struggle, no evidence of forced entry. The door had been locked from inside. Austrian paramedics pronounced death at 8:34 a.m., noting preliminary cause as cardiac arrest. Under normal circumstances, the investigation would have ended there. A middle-aged man, overweight, stressed, away from home. Heart attacks happened. But the bodyguard refused to accept the explanation. He made phone calls to Tehran that triggered immediate escalation. Within hours, Vajo officers stationed at the Iranian embassy demanded Austrian authorities treat the death as suspicious. The Austrians found themselves trapped between diplomatic obligations and practical reality. They could not ignore Iranian demands without damaging relations. But they also could not find evidence of foul play that simply did not exist. The toxicology reports showed nothing. The autopsy revealed a heart that had stopped without apparent cause. The room contained no poisons, no weapons, no signs that anyone except Nazari had entered. For 72 hours, the investigation proceeded in circles. Iranian officials demanded access to the body, to the room, to hotel records. Austrian police complied reluctantly, finding nothing but growing more uncomfortable with each passing hour. Something felt wrong, even if they could not articulate what. The break came from an unexpected source. Listen carefully, because this is where most accounts of the operation end. What follows has never been publicly confirmed. An Austrian detective named Klaus Hoffmann had spent 20 years investigating organized crime before transferring to homicide. He trusted instinct over evidence, and his instinct screamed that Nazari's death was wrong. Not the death itself. People died, but the circumstances. The timing. A senior Iranian nuclear official in Vienna without protection, dying of natural causes exactly when his expertise was most valuable to a weapons program Israel had threatened to destroy. Hoffman began reviewing security footage with obsessive focus. He watched Nazari's movements backward and forward, cataloging every person who appeared within 10 meters of the victim. Most were tourists, hotel guests, ordinary citizens whose presence explained itself. But one woman caught his attention. Near the Staatsoper. 11 seconds of interaction. Papers falling. Nazari bending to help. The woman's face was partially obscured by a hat, but Hoffman captured the clearest frame and ran it through European law enforcement databases. No match. He expanded the search to Interpol's system. Nothing. But when he submitted the image to a contact at BND, Germany's foreign intelligence service, the response arrived within hours. Not through official channels, but a phone call suggesting he stop asking questions. The suggestion confirmed everything. Hoffman understood he had stumbled into something far beyond Austrian homicide jurisdiction. He also understood that pursuing the investigation would end his career, possibly his life. He was not a hero. He had a wife, 2 children, a pension approaching maturity. The file was closed with a finding of natural causes, but Hoffman kept copies. And years later, those copies would surface in ways that complicated Israel's diplomatic position across Europe. The aftermath of Winter Glass extended far beyond one detective's suspicions. Iran's response was immediate and furious. The government recalled its ambassador to Austria, expelled 2 Austrian diplomats from Tehran, and launched a propaganda campaign accusing Israel of state terrorism. Hezbollah received authorization to plan retaliatory operations against Israeli targets in South America and Europe. Intelligence services across the region went on heightened alert, anticipating attacks that might come months or years later. Within Israel, the operation was considered a tactical success but strategic complication. Nazari's death disrupted Iran's nuclear program. His specific expertise in centrifuge cascade optimization was irreplaceable in the short term. But the diplomatic fallout damaged relationships with European allies who privately condemned the operation while publicly maintaining ambiguity. Austria never formally accused Israel, but bilateral relations deteriorated noticeably in subsequent years. The 17 operatives who executed Winter Glass scattered across continents within hours of confirmation. They traveled through tertiary airports, changed identities multiple times, and eventually returned to Israel through routes designed to prevent tracking. Most resumed normal lives, families, jobs, the ordinary existence that contrasted so sharply with their professional activities. None would ever discuss the operation publicly. Their service would remain invisible, acknowledged only in classified commendations that their children would never see. But one operative did not return. This is the part that transforms Winterglass from a successful assassination into something more troubling. Something that haunts Israeli intelligence professionals who study the operation as both triumph and warning. The woman near the Staatsoper, the one who dropped papers and created the distraction, was identified in operational records only by her code name, Tamar. She was 34 years old, a 12-year veteran of Kaidon, with a service record that included operations across 3 continents. Colleagues described her as coldly professional, emotionally detached, the ideal temperament for work that required harming people without hesitation or remorse. Tamar's extraction was scheduled for 3:40 a.m. on December 13th, a flight from Vienna to Zurich under Canadian documentation. She confirmed the reservation. She packed her belongings. She left her hotel at 3:05 a.m., surveillance cameras capturing her departure. She never arrived at the airport. Her phone transmitted location data until 3:47 a.m., when the signal terminated near the Prater amusement park, several kilometers from any logical route to the airport. Search teams found nothing. No body, no belongings, no evidence of what happened during those 42 minutes between hotel and disappearance. The possibilities were grim. Counter-surveillance by Vegi officers who identified and intercepted her. Abduction by an intelligence service seeking to interrogate someone connected to Nazari's death. Random crime in a city where such things occasionally happened. Or something else entirely. A disappearance that served purposes no one outside the highest levels of Israeli intelligence understood. Mossad launched a quiet investigation that continued for months. Assets across Europe were tasked with identifying any Iranian operation that might have captured Tamar. Hospitals, morgues, and detention facilities were monitored for any sign of her presence. Nothing emerged. She had simply vanished, leaving behind questions that perhaps would never be answered. Some within the organization speculated that her disappearance was itself an operation, that Tamar had been extracted through unconventional means for reasons unrelated to Winterglass. Others suggested she had defected, trading her knowledge for protection from an enemy service. The truth, if anyone knew it, remained locked in files that even senior Mossad officers could not access. What we know for certain ends here. What follows is reconstruction based on fragments, leaked documents, anonymous sources, patterns that suggest larger truths. Dr. Farhad Nazari's death created a temporary setback for Iran's nuclear program. The specific expertise he possessed, practical knowledge accumulated over decades of improvisation under sanctions, could not be replaced quickly. Younger engineers struggled with problems Nazari had solved through experience and intuition. Timeline projections for weapons capability extended by months, possibly years. But programs survived the loss of individuals, even exceptional ones. New scientists were recruited, training accelerated. By 2021, Iran's enrichment capabilities had recovered and exceeded pre-2019 levels. The centrifuges spun faster, the uranium accumulated. Whatever advantage Israel gained through Nazari's elimination proved temporary. The operation's broader impact was harder to measure. It demonstrated reach, the ability to eliminate targets anywhere, under any circumstances, despite the most intensive security precautions. That message resonated in Tehran, Damascus, and Beirut, where officials suddenly felt less secure in their assumptions about personal safety. Some changed behaviors, becoming harder targets for future operations. Others accepted fate with the resignation of men who understood they could not hide forever. For Austria, Winterglass remained an unacknowledged humiliation. A foreign intelligence service had executed an assassination in their capital, under surveillance they were supposed to maintain, and escaped without arrest or consequence. The Hoffman files circulated through security circles, a reminder that neutrality provided no protection against nations determined to pursue enemies wherever they fled. And somewhere, perhaps in a prison cell in Tehran, or a grave in an unmarked location, or a new life under a different name, Tamar existed or did not exist. Her fate, the final mystery of an operation built on mysteries. What does winter glass reveal about the world we live in? That certain individuals can be erased from existence with surgical precision, their deaths disguised as natural misfortune. That national boundaries mean nothing when powerful states decide someone must die. That the machinery of assassination has evolved beyond recognition, replacing bullets with chemistry and violence with patience. The Hotel Imperial still operates. Room 408 has been renovated since December 2019. The carpet replaced, the furniture updated. Guests sleep in beds similar to the one where Nazari died, unaware of the history surrounding them. The Staatsoper still hosts performances. The Christmas markets still fill with tourists each December. Nothing marks the locations where an operation unfolded that changed nothing and everything. And in Tel Aviv, in offices where such decisions are made, analysts are already studying the next file, the next authorization, the next target who believes himself safe until the moment he learns otherwise. Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this investigation into invisible warfare changed how you see international relations, hit that like button and share this video. Subscribe because we're exposing the operations that governments deny and the machinery of power that operates in perpetual shadow. Hit the notification bell. The next buried operation is already unfolding somewhere, waiting to be revealed.